That was a great performance by Keyshawn Davis against Nahir Albright. I really thought he was going to get a finish there in the late rounds, but ultimately it's just a decision. I really liked the corner advice to just lay on punches. I heard the words 10-punch combination out of Keyshawn Davis's corner, which I'm honestly surprised you don't hear from more guys with finishing instincts with good hands, like the corner actually saying, like, just throw a crazy combination right now, bro. You don't really hear corners give that kind of advice, which is weird, but Keyshawn Davis's corner is like, no, just lay on punches, throw a 10-punch combination. Nahir Albright doesn't really have knockout power the other way. I'm kind of tired of corners giving advice that isn't, like, objective. Like, why are you giving subjective advice to a fighter? Why are you giving, advice that's up to any kind of, like, interpretation to somebody who's getting punched in the face? Right? I don't really understand it. Tell them exactly what to do. Even if they're winning the fight, tell them exactly what to do. If you want them to just lay on punches, tell them to just lay on punches. And the corner man was right. The fight should have been over in round 11, actually, honestly, with how tired Nahir Albright was. And Keyshawn Davis asked for this fight to be a 12-round fight because he knew that Nahir Albright, or he thought that Nahir Albright might not have a 12-round gas tank. And it really didn't look like he did. It looked like Nahir Albright, especially in there against somebody who was beating him up, didn't really have the endurance to go that extra 6 minutes. Maybe if he had been more able to determine the tempo and the pace of the fight, but I think from round one, Keyshawn Davis was kind of in control here, especially with the 1-2. It's never a good sign when Keyshawn Davis, whose bread and butter is that 1-2, is kind of just flush with it the whole time. I was definitely spot on in my preview video when I said that Keyshawn is a better fighter than he was 2 years ago. He looks like a much better fighter than he was 2 years ago. Nahir Albright gave him definitely more inherent problems in the first fight than he did in this fight, and Keyshawn's skill set has definitely leveled up, and a big part of what I saw definitely reminded me of Shakur Stevenson, who was in the crowd tonight, and that was Keyshawn's ability to disengage, to frustrate Albright by disengaging. And for that, it's a lot like the Shakur versus Teofimo fight. And I feel like I'm just comparing a ton of fights lately to Shakur versus Teofimo, a lot of one-sided fights. But I don't know, I feel like back in if I was doing this in 2005, there was no boxing YouTube in 2005, but if I was doing this in 2005, I was 9. I would be comparing a lot of fights to, Floyd Mayweather versus Arturo Gatti. Can literally become synonymous with ass kicking for a while, right? People just use that fight to refer to an ass kicking. I feel like that's how I'm referring to Shakur versus Teofimo lately. And this fight wasn't actually as one-sided as that, but it was similar in that you were seeing Keyshawn operate comfortably on the back foot and the front foot. And I think that's ultimately why Keyshawn had no problem with this rematch. I mean, I think he just knew that he could beat Nahir Albright again and that it would be kind of an easy night's work. And, I think the most concerning thing for Keyshawn of the whole weekend, I mean, it went nowhere near as bad as the last, card that he headlined, or failed to headline, actually, in his hometown of Norfolk. But the biggest issue, again, I think, was the weight and the weight cut, and that was also the issue for Brian Norman, who ran through a fighter I hadn't heard of before named Josh Wagner, who was apparently a construction worker. He quit boxing to go be a construction worker and then got brought back. And since he's come back, he's been on a losing streak. So it's not really very strong opposition for Brian Norman. It's a pretty easy get-back fight for Brian Norman. And it was also very weak opposition for Keyshawn's brother Kelvin, who fought Peter Dobson, who is a New York City fireman, or will be a New York City fireman in the future. After he retires from boxing, and went on, I believe, a 3-fight. He was undefeated, 16-0, went on a 3-fight losing streak, and then went on another massive losing streak that isn't like technically on his professional boxing record. He's still considered to be 16-3, but he went on a massive losing streak in like some kind of like city-based boxing league that I'm not really familiar with, where they apparently do 1-round fights. And again, based on this fight against Kelvin Davis tonight, he's clearly not a very good fighter in 1-round fights. He got off to a really slow start in this fight and took a long time to actually get into the fight and start winning rounds. I didn't have him winning a round until the 5th, but then he won every round until the 10th. I'm looking at my scorecard here, because I had this fight a draw. Yeah, I had the first 4 rounds for Kelvin Davis, then I had 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 for Peter Dobson, and then round 10 for Kelvin Davis. So I had a 59-59 draw, and the scorecards were all over the place in real life for this fight. I believe it was 97-93 for Davis, and then some other scorecard for Davis, I'm not sure, maybe 99, I think it was 99-91, and then the other scorecard was 98-92 for Dobson. It was really wide because it was a really hard fight to score, and the truth is it was a bad fight. It was one of the worst fights that I've watched in my whole time covering fights on this channel. It was a pretty bad, pretty drab fight. I said on my social posts In addition to posting my scorecards for this fight, my hand-drawn scorecards, which I had particularly bad scribbles. My handwriting was particularly bad this week, but whatever, on my scorecard. I try to post scorecards for all the fights that I watch. But in addition to my handwritten scorecard, I posted just a quick reaction to the Kelvin Davis fight, which was that I don't think that I saw Kelvin Davis throw a combination of more than 2 punches in the whole fight. I mean, like, I understand that, like, the most annoying thing to hear as someone who is actually a boxer from a fan like me is just let your hands go, dumbass, because, like, it's not like that. Obviously, you can't just let your hands go. Even if you're the favorite, even if you're ahead in the fight, you can't just let your hands go all the time. But it's a whole other thing to have. This was a 10-round fight for Kelvin Davis, which I don't really know if he's honestly, I don't know if he's a 10-round fighter, really. I know that sounds mean, but, like, I don't know if he has really the offensive skill set to go 10 rounds with most professional 10-round fighters if you're not going to throw anything beyond a 2-piece. And his last 2 fights, he just has not looked like he can impact his opponents. His punches don't have it's not that they don't have sharpness, but they don't have finish. They don't have finish, and it doesn't look like he's actually really that able to hurt his opponents. It seems like he's kind of confused as to when to go to the head and when to go to the body as well. He really believes in his length, and he really believes in his reach, and it's not necessarily that that's wrong. It's a good tool, and I think it's part of why you could actually reasonably score this fight for Kelvin Davis, because the work is consistent enough, and his arms are long, and he's able to control the distance consistently enough. But as the fight wore on, Dobson was actually more and more able to move forward. In the early rounds, it looked like Dobson was just going to have nothing, and Davis, it was going to be a really boring one-sided fight where Davis just led with the 1-2. But as Dobson started to work his way into the fight, it really was like Davis didn't know what to do. I very casually expected, once Dobson started doing good work, I very casually expected Davis to just add to that 1-2, to just add more punches. And he didn't do that. He just kept trying to throw the 1-2 and just move around the ring. And it was very easy to give Dobson those rounds. And I think that a lot of time it happens to American fighters who, use that stick and move kind of skill set, that move in a circle kind of skill set. They just assume that when they're moving around and that they see themselves as determining where the fight's happening, and they think that the fight should be scored for them, a la William Skull against Canelo. I know that William Skull isn't an American fighter, but that's what he was trying to do against Canelo, right? You can't give him those rounds. So I had this fight a draw, and I was really thoroughly unimpressed with Kelvin Davis. And, Keyshawn Davis, a good fighter, but he's so early in his career, and the level of competition is so low that you really can't take much from it. But he was a lot less afraid to let his hands go. And I know that there were fights earlier in Kelvin Davis's career when he did let his hands go, but I don't know, man. The opposition, Peter Dobson, not a great fighter. I wasn't super impressed with what I saw from Peter Dobson. I would think that somebody with the length of Kelvin Davis would be able to get him out of there. I think maybe Kelvin Davis needs to move up a weight class and take some even easier matchups if they can find them. This was supposed to be an easy matchup, though. That should honestly be a concerning result for Kelvin Davis's camp. And honestly, through the Kelvin Davis fight and through the Brian Norman fight, the atmosphere in the building was just kind of weird. The crowd didn't really fill out until the Keyshawn fight at the end. But I don't know, maybe we've just been spoiled by these big mega cards we get so consistently recently. And I know that this fight was in Norfolk, Virginia, right? But I feel like the last Keyshawn Davis card, I was actually impressed by the size of the crowd early on. And then a lot of the fights I've watched recently in smaller, markets and smaller fight markets where I would expect there to be a smaller crowd on the undercard. There actually hasn't been one, but there was a very small crowd for the undercard. And I think a smaller crowd than you would hope if you were Brian Norman. It definitely seems like I might be worrying that he's a struggle to draw, but he definitely won't be. I think that's partially because of the loss to Devin Haney, and just, he really had a chance to establish himself as, a feared fighter in this division, and, that reputation certainly was damped down by Devin Haney. But the problem with Brian Norman is if you can't do what Devin Haney did to him, he is a very dangerous fighter. And the truth is that Josh Wagner, I don't know where he came from, but that's a pretty good fighter to fight for, a pick-me-up win. Josh Wagner didn't really seem to have very much punch resistance or very much... I mean, he might have had something offensively to say back to some fighters in that weight class, but not Brian Norman. Brian Norman, very hungry. I think that he thought he was going to come right at Devin Haney and have a slugfest with Devin Haney. And, like I said, with fighters that disengage really well, that's just really, really hard to do. And, we can talk about Brian Norman's validity as a fighter in the top level against those excellent American fighters who were excellent at disengaging and at moving back and at frustrating guys who like to move forward and walk forward on you and actually knock people out like Brian Norman. But when he's in his element, he's so fun to watch, and you can't blame all these people online. I mean, I definitely take it with a grain of salt, but I understand the hype I see on Twitter and on YouTube and comment sections and everything on streams of the fight, of people getting hyped up and wondering what's next for Brian Norman Jr. with his skill set, because he looks so explosive when he's on, and really it just makes me look back at Devin Haney and go, like, I'm telling you, if you know boxing, you know that there's something special at least about Devin Haney and the way that he fights. It might not be the most exciting thing in the world, but the way that he neutralizes exciting fighters is at least interesting. It's at least something to think about and to admire in a fighter, the ability to do that, even if I think there's a fighter in Shakur Stevenson who's faster and a southpaw and more entertaining. But I'm just getting down on Devin Haney again. I tend to do that a lot, I'm sorry. But yeah, there were some boring fights on this card. This card kind of had a weird vibe to it. You know, Keyshawn loves Norfolk, but I think that there's also a big part of him that wants bigger fights, that wants bigger paydays. I don't think that he'll ever fight Shakur Stevenson because they're friends and because they train together. And I mean, he clearly takes so much of, you know, inspiration from Shakur. And I don't even necessarily know if I'd ever want to see that fight. I think it's fine if they have separate, you know, existences, especially if you're going to have Shakur's going to be at Zuffa Boxing if Keyshawn wants to go another way, and there's going to be 6 belts in every weight class because we're just in the complete bozo clown era of this sport at this point. We've just completely gone off the rails 20 years ago with the 4 belt shit. It should have never been above 3. Don't get me going on the whole belt rant. I'll do that one day. I'll do a whole video about the whole belt situation one day, I promise. That's one of the things that I want to make a big video. The whole history of how we got in this whole ridiculous belt kerfuffle now that Zuffa is claiming it's going to be able to fix, but I don't really actually think that's realistically going to happen. I just can't really see a world where the Zuffa belt is the only belt. But I mean, hey, maybe. If people seem to be very convinced that Zuffa is going to take over the whole game. I just think there's so many voices at the table. And just to touch on it real quick, I mean, if you believe that Dana White actually is like some kind of a gifted fight promoter and didn't just find a product that was a massive hole in the market, which that's what it is. He's not actually really a genius fight promoter. He basically invented and popularized MMA. Wow, congratulations, right? Like, that's not, someone was going to do that, okay? It's an opportunity. He just stepped into the gap, right? I am a confirmed Dana White hater. Like Mcgregor versus Holloway. Like, really? Mcgregor, we're that desperate. Like, you dedicated so much of your time and energy to Zuffa Boxing and put so many fights on at the frickin' apex and sucked so much of the life out of the UFC over the course of the last few years. With the exception of, like, a few excellent moments, the UFC was built on strong undercards, and the Saudis came into boxing and just took that advantage right away from you, right? And now here he comes along. He's going to undo that with Max Holloway. Like, this, it's what it is. He's going to get Max Holloway a boosting win over, you know, don't even get me started on the state Conor McGregor's in. What are we doing, right? What are we doing? Max Holloway is going to head kick KO1 Conor McGregor. What, is Conor McGregor going to spend every single second from now until the fight starts in Dagestan? Is he going to do the Oliveira method on Holloway? Is he going to take him down 24 times? Is that what McGregor's going to do to Holloway? Or is he going to spend every second from now until the fight starts on his yacht off the coast of Florida doing coke